Welcome back to the show, everybody. This is the Transfer Show, and joining me tonight from the Chelsea Roar, your number one Chelsea fan podcast, Ian the Dynamo Kelly. How are we, Ian?
How are you, brother? All good?
Good, not a bother. I said I'd have you on for the Transfer Show. We've been telling our viewers and subscribers that the Transfer Show this season will be slightly different insofar as we're going to break it into two segments. The first segment, we'll look at general transfers, and the second half of the show, then we focus purely on Chelsea and we do a Chelsea edition transfer show. So, as
Sounds good.
always, head over to YouTube, smash that subscribe and bell notification button on both shows. Show your support. Great content going down there, literally on a daily at this stage. Even though there isn't much football bar international, we're still focusing on bringing you great content. We just released a show today with John McNichol, a writer who's wrote two fabulous books on football. We had a great interview with him there during the week, and it went out there today. So check that out. But as always, let's get into these transfers. Ian, there's two we want to probably start with, two of the most high-profile ones that have happened already. Erling Haaland to Man City. Thoughts on this?
It's a no-brainer, isn't it? It's one of those as well where it's kind of funny, isn't it? You know, all of a sudden he's been a fan all of his life, you know, and then there's pictures of him in Arsenal jerseys and different kinds of jerseys, which I think is quite funny just for the banter of it all. I mean, look, he was going to whoever paid him the most money, wasn't it? Whoever paid him, you know, the most money, and his dad the most fees. I think Roy Keane was right. To be honest with you, I'm not going to say anything further. I just think Roy Keane was right. I think the dad's an out-and-out little bloodsucker, to be honest with you. And, you know, these footballers back in the day knew who were bloodsuckers and who were little wankers as well, didn't they? You know what I mean? They knew the scene. It was no different than Oasis and Blur and all these bands knowing who the sound lads were and who weren't. It was the same in the football circle.
Yeah, I think though in terms of the signings, it's definitely laid down a marker for the rest of us in terms of having to do some serious business this summer in terms of keeping up the pace with Man City.
Well, that's where I was going to go next. Like, as I said, like my first comment was it's a no-brainer. Of course it is, because it's like, you know, it's a no-brainer in terms of what the kid brings. Do you know what I mean? He's an absolute beast of a man, like, and you know, he's gonna be. It's very strange because he's like a mix. He's a throwback to the old school centre forward, which I like. I love that. You know what I mean? I love that. But it's a huge marker, and one that's only been answered by yourselves, really. You know,
so far, yeah.
Yeah. Well, so far, we don't know what's going to happen next. Yeah.
Well, I'm hoping plenty of other teams are going to move in the market as well. And as I said to you, even towards the end of the season, we need a number of teams in there challenging to really lay down a marker to them. We don't want a situation next season again where it's just ourselves and City. We need a number of people involved to really heap the pressure on. What about in terms of? I mean, we'll move on to Darwin Núñez in a minute. But this guy, he's an absolute machine, isn't he? And he's going to score goals. What you're thinking on teams going back to this traditional 9 now, as opposed to the false 9 that has been flavour of the month now for a number of years?
Well, you know me, I'm a fan of it. Like, I was a striker when I played. Tried to model myself more on Del Piero, if I'm honest, and Zola and stuff like that. You know, because I was a little bit shorter than some of the other lads. But I did try and get involved in that centre position with the lads who were much bigger than me, and I love seeing lads that have that, and the women, of course, now, that have the cojones to kind of really get stuck in and kind of play with the back to goal and be a focal point. I think, you know, because it was kind of Pep in Spain, it was the Spanish international team then as well that were really pushing this, and then you saw the Germans going with the false 9 and stuff, and I like it, but I'm a fan of the traditional number 9 who gets his head on the ball, you know, who tries to bully defenders, who tries to, you know, like when you look at my team, we'll talk about it later. Like, you know, look at someone like Drogba, for example, and, you know, the Vialis and the Kerry Dixons and those sort of players. They were the traditional 9s. Like, you look at Van Nistelrooy, Robbie Fowler, all those guys, you know, Ian Wright. I've always been a fan of that traditional out and out number 9 who's a bit of a bollocks, bit of a pest,
Mm,
but most importantly puts the ball away. You know what I mean? I'm not talking about the Emil Heskey number 9s or the Chris Sutton
mm.
for 1 year at Chelsea number 9s. I'm talking about those lads that put the ball away on top of the rest of the work. You know what I mean?
Yeah, we're doing. I'm doing a show with Mark tomorrow actually, and we're going to be focusing on that. We're going to be looking at Premier League combined worst 11s and stuff like that, and all, and various things like that. So a number of interesting names have cropped up over the last couple of days. Let's move
I'll
on then.
probably mention two there. In fairness, to that.
They actually both weren't mentioned, believe it or not. Not so far, not in mine anyway. I haven't seen Mark's yet, but it'd be interesting to see. Let's move on. Darwin Núñez into Liverpool. 80
Listen,
kind of 80 million euros, depending on what you believe, and 20 million in add-ons.
yeah, look, there's a lot of back and forth banter between City and Liverpool fans on Twitter about it, and Liverpool and Bill called hypocrites and here blah 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 and getting everything for free. I don't really subscribe to that. Really, I think if you have a budget and you know exactly where you need to kind of put that budget to good use, well, then you buy the player that you think you need. And I mean, Darwin Núñez, from what I've seen of him anyway, not going to tend to be an expert on him, but what I've seen of him definitely looks like a player made for the Premier League. You know what I mean? He has that bit of shithousery about him. Like he looks like a thug. You know what I mean?
Mm,
Um, with the nice hair, but still a thug.
yeah,
Big boy, about 6'2" or 6'3" as well.
yeah,
Again, two clubs going away from that. You know, traditional centre forward in the last couple of years, and then bringing them back. It's like, all right,
mm,
well, I'll see you and I'll raise you.
mm,
I suppose the only question would be is, Erling Haaland's done it in the German division. Nunes has done it in the Portuguese division. He's done it in Europe as well. So now I'm
mm,
not saying that that's going to be a factor, but they're the questions, you know what I mean, that are going to be asked. But I think when you look at the stature of these boys and the size of them and the athleticism of them, but
mm,
also they're not just two big donkeys up front either. You know what I mean? They have a
mm,
good touch. They know they can really kind of make use of their wingers and the oncoming midfielders. Their press is very good as well.
yeah,
So it's very interesting. Like it's a marker laid down, and I know United fans might say, "Oh, well, Ten Hag, said no, blah 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 for this money." But look, it's easy when when you lose the hand in Texas Hold'em, you're going to tell people, well, I done that on purpose. You know what I mean? You don't. You know,
yeah.
sometimes sometimes we can't take it on the chin. You know what I
Yeah, yeah,
mean?
absolutely. Yeah.
So I think it's a
Um,
great sign for Liverpool. And I mean, again, the real number is what, 60 million plus add-ons,
yeah,
70 million plus
yeah,
add-ons.
it's about 65, 67 million pounds plus 18 million in add-ons or something like that. But whatever it works out, but it's a 6 year contract. So, it's 10, 11 mil a year, you know what I mean, when you
But if he
monetize and
does
stuff
up
like that.
front for what Van Dijk has done for your backline, well then,
It's
are we
money
going to
well
remember
spent.
this conversation? In 2 years' time?
Look, you know how I feel about football. In 5 years' time, we'll be paying 200 million for players, so it doesn't really matter the way inflation's going.
Yeah.
Um, what is I mean, I suppose looking at it, I mean, he's come from Benfica, and there's always a concern that always come from this league, and can he do it in that league? And you always get heard with this stuff. But I mean, this is the same team that gave us Bernardo Silva. It's the same team that gave us Ruben Diaz. You know what I mean? So we've nothing to fear in terms of that. Really, these are proper ballers that tend to come in. That Portuguese league has gone through quite a revolution, hasn't it?
Well, Luis Diaz came from there as well. Don't forget, like, and then
Yeah, from Porto.
of
Yeah.
course we had David Luiz as well, who's quite um talk about shithousery. No,
Yeah.
but I mean, it's a good league. Some like, man, they get some of these South Americans in and Portuguese lads as well.
Yeah.
The scouting networks have just gotten so good, and I think that's a league that really does bring players to the Premier League that fit in. You know what I mean? Like, you even look at the Wolves team. You know, the amount of players that have come in from the Wolves team, you wouldn't have thought. Like, nobody thought João Moutinho was going to fit into the Premier League, and look how good he's been.
Yeah.
Ruben Neves, look how
Ruben
good he's
Neves.
been, and
Neto.
and yeah,
Yeah.
The list goes on. And then you go back then to 2004 when Jose came in, and the players he brought in, like Ricky Carvalho, Paulo Ferreira, and Deco came eventually as well.
Yeah.
There's something about the Portuguese players that just fit in England. I don't know what it is.
Yeah, there's been a
That come,
massive resurgence, hasn't there? Even with the French league. When you look at the French league now,
yeah,
they're producing some serious footballers now as well.
yeah, hundred
Um,
percent. It's crazy because you remember a time where the South Americans did not fit into the Premier League at all. They just
yeah,
didn't. It was a different culture. They didn't like the weather. They didn't like it, and I suppose the money was in Italy and Spain as well. So I suppose that's probably got something to do with it to keep you happy.
yeah,
But no, I mean, I think the resurgence of I think between those two in particular at the moment, the German league has its moments where some players come from the German teams as well. To be fair, I think we're seeing less and less coming from Italy and Spain probably over the last couple of years. But the Spanish have fit in well here. But yeah, those two stand out. The French league and the Portuguese league in particular
yeah. I
really
think I
seems
think
good.
I think with the Italian league and with the Spanish league, because they've been producing some good young talent, that talent has been soaked up locally, and they've
Yeah,
decided to stay in their local leagues because of their international career potentially and stuff like that.
yeah, yeah,
Sometimes when they move away from their local leagues, especially in Spain and in Italy, they get overlooked at an international level and stuff like that, and that's a
yeah,
big part of their game now, from a
yeah,
culture point of view, if nothing else.
yeah.
Let's move on. Let's talk about Man United for a second. This Frankie De Jong deal
How
that
long
they
have we
seem
got?
well, they've had over a month. But what's your thoughts on this? Do you see them getting this over the line, or do you see there's been mumblings now over the last couple of days that if they try to hold them over a barrel, they'll walk away. I think Frankie gave a bit of an interview last night. I think after the Dutch game, and he was saying that he's in Barcelona. That's the team of his dreams. That's where he wants to play. He's also, I think he's just put together. He's just bought a mansion or something like 3-4 million quid mansion or something like that, and he doesn't seem to want to leave. What's your general thinking on that at the moment? Do you think they're going to get this over the line?
I think they have to. I really think they have to because like yous have kind of in neighborly love, and all that love in between United and Liverpool. You've done them. You've done them really. Let's be
Yeah,
fair.
yeah,
Um, and look, rightly so. But I think United need to get this on. This is the guy that they wanted. This is the guy that Ten Hag obviously wants. Um, they need to make that kind of statement signing to say that United are back. And it's not one of those statement signings of like a Ronaldo last year on a free just to bring people in for jerseys, or a Lewandowski on a free when people are at the tail end of their career. This is the one that you want, that a player in their prime wants to come and play for Manchester United, which is, all banter aside, still a great club, a great badge, great tradition, and you should want to be playing for Man United. And when you hear that sort of stuff, I mean, if I'm a United fan, it doesn't. I'm kind of like already not really with you if that's what you're talking. You know what I mean? It's
yeah.
like,
It's going to like they're going to drag him nearly to the club, kicking and screaming type of thing. You know what I mean? Which
yeah,
doesn't generally always work out. I suppose the problem they have at the moment is nearly all the teams now, and we spoke about it before, can offer the money. Money is not an issue anymore. If Chelsea are offering 200 grand, or United are offering 200 grand, or City are offering 200 grand, they all have money to throw around in terms of wages. There isn't that gulf anymore where we could only offer 80, but Chelsea could offer 200, and then that's a decision maker. The other side of it as well is that I think with it being a World Cup year as well, they're very focused on wanting to play football at the very highest level. So the thoughts of playing Thursday Europa League football as opposed to the eyes being on you playing Champions League football on a Tuesday and Wednesday much must be a huge factor as well.
we're
Um,
coming into a World Cup year on top of that, as you
yeah,
mentioned. You know what I
yeah,
mean?
yeah, and especially in a Dutch side as well that has a lot of talent there at the moment, and they're doing really really well. So they've a lot of options there. So you're not necessarily like, unless you're a Van Dyke or, you're not necessarily guaranteed your place in that team. So you have to be playing at a certain level to make sure that you're in that conversation.
Yeah, I mean, look, I mean, I think the Frankie De Jong one. I think, like Donny Van de Beek as well, talking about not really two and twos, I suppose, to go back to United. It would worry me if I was a United fan. I'd be like, well, what is this? Like, we're meant to have this Dutch revolution, and that's actually one. Like, we look back at the players that did come from the Dutch league in the Premier League years. You know what I mean? Early on, and we look at Ruud. I know they didn't come directly from the Dutch league, but they were Dutch
Yeah,
players,
yeah.
and that came from those great Ajax sides and PSV and Feyenoord. We had Bergkamp, Ruud Hullet, Jimmy Floyd, the list of
Overmars,
Overmars,
Overmars. Yeah,
Van
amazing
Bronckhorst,
players.
all
Yeah,
these great players. And you're kind of going, it, they don't seem to fit in the modern Premier League, which is weird because, I mean, a lot of them are big boys. Physically they should be able for it, and technically they should be able for it, but they just don't seem to fit. I don't know what it is. I don't know whether it's the tactics or what. I mean, look, when I look at De Jong, I think he's an absolutely fantastic player. I mean, for me, I'd look at my own club or look at your club and look or even look at say even City and go, he's a shoe in for your midfield somehow. You know what I mean? You put him
yeah,
in there potentially to replace an aging player, or you put him in there and let him work for his place in one of those top sides. And maybe that's what he's playing at. Maybe he knows that his time is kind of up with Barcelona due to their current financial situation, and he's trying to make sure that he goes to a place that he wants. I don't know, but for me, from a United perspective, I'm just thinking it's very difficult, and I've heard Dazzler talking about it as well on previous shows as well. Like, United don't want to be seen the club that are begging players to come.
yeah,
One Dutch player we fucking missed out with, Ruud van Nistelrooy, for God's sakes.
yeah.
Um, like, that's not United, and like
Van Persie, Van
Van
Persie,
Persie, for fuck's sakes, yeah,
yeah.
Jesus
The
Christ,
perfect example.
yeah,
Yeah,
like, so, like, this is the player Van Persie who had a great time at Arsenal and actually went to United because it was considered an upgrade at the time, and
yeah,
it was at that time. You know what I mean? I'm not trying to wind up any of our Arsenal friends, but I'm saying at that time it probably was an upgrade in terms of going and getting silverware and stuff like that.
mm.
Um, and now you're literally fighting for a player what valued at 80 million, and
What do you reckon De Jong's game is? I mean, do you think, is he kind of there? He knows he has a potential deal there with United, but maybe he just doesn't like maybe what the project is. Because I mean, this is a boy who's played under Ten Hag. This
I
is a
think
guy
he
who
needs
Ten
to
Hag
be
would not very well.
convinced. I think he needs to be convinced because I wonder with Ten Hag, like, I wonder how convinced Ten Hag is as well. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
That's the curveball. I wonder how convinced Ten Hag is that, right, it's all well and good getting ETH in there now, but, like, is he in the back of his mind? Is he fearful, going, right? Is it going to be the same shit that has happened to every other manager?
yeah,
Like, are they going to back my decision if I don't want the Ronaldo in my team? Are the club going to say, right, well, then he's gone? You know what I mean? So
yeah.
I don't know whether the conversations that he's had with Ten Hag, that Ten Hag is reassuring him the way that he probably wants to be reassured, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I'm sort of looking at it from the outside in, and I'm thinking, is there teams there at the moment? As you said, a lot of teams will be interested in this boy. Is there a lot of teams sitting back letting United do the groundwork like what we did with Darwin Nunes? And then is a team going to come in and let's for argument's sake a PSG or a Man City or whatever it is? We know Man City have been sniffing around the boy anyway. So I wonder, is it a case where the groundwork is going to be laid by United and someone else is going to come in and hijack the deal like what happened with Nunes? And if he was offered Man City and under Pep Guardiola with Champions League football, that squad, a team at its pomp at the moment, Erling Haaland after going in there, Julian Alvarez going in there. This is a team where they're moving players out now that are still really, really good players that we'll talk about later in the Chelsea section. But they're also bringing in top quality players as well. They have a plan. They're going back to a traditional nine, the way they're thinking and stuff like that. If City came in, would he look at that and even for less money turn around and go, do you know something? That's where I need to go.
Well, why wouldn't you?
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Why wouldn't you? Like, I mean, it's very hard for United fans to accept this, and I get it. I get it. But City have surpassed them in that sense because they've won so many league titles in modern history. They are thereabouts in the Champions League. You know, whether albeit the final, the semi-final this year. Um, like they're knocking on the door. Do you know what I mean? And they don't look like they're slowing down anytime soon.
No.
So it's like, you know, the whole look at the end of the day, like Nottingham Forest and Aston Villa are starting to come back up, but they were an attractive proposition to people at one point because of what they'd achieved. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Now, not so much because teams have surpassed them. It's just the evolution of football, the way it works. You know what I mean?
Mm.
Yous had your time during the '90s, obviously, where you had to play second fiddle, and you know, United had to do it to us, and now we're having to do it to City and yourselves. It's just
Mm.
it swings and roundabouts. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
And
I feel this week listening. I know the window's only open basically a week on Friday,
there's a
but
lot of
listening,
teams though. There's a lot of teams fans I have to say, and I just want to say it to whatever team you follow. Take a fucking breath though, or take a day or two
yeah,
off Twitter as well,
yeah,
because my God, people are panicking.
yeah.
Like,
That's what I was going to say. There's a kind of there's a kind of an anxiety running through the fan
yeah,
base, isn't there, at the moment? That, like,
yeah,
it's as if they thought that teams obviously were doing a lot of groundwork and stuff like that beforehand. But sometimes some of these deals, it takes a bit of time to get them over the line. Not many deals are very straightforward, you know.
no,
And,
especially in
and
the
they
modern
obviously,
day.
yeah, and they especially have a lot of moving parts. And if you think about the Frankie De Jong one, they're Barcelona are trying because of their wage cap issue and stuff like that and their finances. They're trying to move out Frankie De Jong to make room for Robin Lewandowski, and Bayern are trying to move out Robin Lewandowski to make room for Mane. So it's all intertwined and connected and stuff like that, and it just needs one deal to move, and then you'll get a splatter of deals going through. But there definitely is at the moment out there, and it's not just United. I've noticed it with United, the fan base at the moment, but across the fan bases at the moment, I think with the exception of probably Spurs, ourselves, and City, who have done a bit of business, most of the other
Chelsea are the main culprits, along with our Chelsea, Arsenal,
Man
and
United,
Man United are the
yeah.
three
You're
panic
feeling it
centre.
even in your own fan base at the moment. Where are these players? Boom, 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 and all that.
But I'm not
Yeah,
worried. Do you know what I mean? That's why I'm saying you
yeah,
need to fucking give people time. You need to assess. Like, don't forget, if you're looking at it from, say, an Arsenal point of view, right? They've literally had a weird season where, like, they were guaranteed top four. Well, they should have got top four. Let's be fucking
yeah.
real. You know, and that again, that's not a knock on any of the Arsenal listeners here. I'm sure they will absolutely agree with everything I've just said and I'm about to say. They had a manager who was potentially going to be sacked from the start of the season to a manager who actually built with a young kind of core and is now what I think has laid an absolutely fantastic foundation to build on. So their board and Arteta and his people need to sit down and go, right, what do we actually need to get to the next level? Do you know what I mean? Don't be worrying about if Gabriel Jesus says fuck you at the end of it, so be it. You know what I mean? How do we get that one or two players in that fit in with the core? Because you know yourself now, it's not just there's a player that looks great from South America, let's get him in. It's all about they look at their mentality, their mindset, their personalities. Is their personality going to fit within the dressing room? Like, it's
Mm.
absolutely crazy what they do now. So yeah, I think certain fan bases, including mine, need to absolutely calm down and just let it take its course. Because what you said is 100% correct. We've seen it so many times in transfer windows where there's that one big sign and just on the horizon, but they forget that the other team needs to get a replacement for that player before they can sign on the dotted line and give approval.
Yeah,
You know what I mean?
yeah.
Um,
And you've also like I suppose if you look at Arsenal and yourselves and Man United, you three probably have potentially maybe the most amount of business to do in terms of putting everything in place. Now, I don't mean necessarily signings. It could be even fitting players back in, bringing players that are on loan back in.
100%,
That
yeah.
all takes time and work as well. But I could say it like in terms of if you talk about volume, certainly yourselves and United anyway need a certain amount of players in there to settle things down again into a rhythm and a formation and stuff like that. But yeah, I just thought I'd bring it up because I sensed it this week, especially as you said with those three. They're just going ballistic. And when other teams sign players, you're saying the Arsenal fan base the other day were in uproar when they heard Basuma was announced yesterday. Basuma going to Spurs, which is a bit of business that I wasn't shocked at all because he's a fabulous player. We should talk about him actually for a second. Eve Basuma, 25 million to Spurs. Conte is on the run at the moment, big time, isn't he, with this?
Well, I think Levy, it's the first time I've seen Levy trying to please a manager because Conte is that type of manager that if you don't tickle his balls and please him easy early on,
Straight out the
he
door.
will, yeah, slong a fall, sayonara. See you later, bitch. It's
Yeah.
that's the way he is. So yeah, I mean, look, I can understand why Arsenal fans probably see that one as an opportunity missed. I think a lot of teams probably missed an opportunity with him, including probably ourselves and even Liverpool and United or City could have done with it.
Any of the top six.
Any of the top six, but I think Tottenham were on the pulse of that whole court case and stuff, and when they realised that there might not be any repercussions. Again, here's something you don't think about with transfers. Maybe Tottenham were in talks with him, going, "Look, no matter what, we want you." Do you know what I mean? Maybe they tickled his ego a little bit and thought,
Mm.
"Right, well, look, regardless of what way this goes, we want you. We'll see. Let's see what
Yeah.
happens." And I mean, they got the go ahead then, and they signed him. That's that. There are things that we're not privy to, and that will
Yeah.
probably come out later.
Yeah, you
So
probably felt that a lot of the other top teams that were probably after him, like ourselves or yourselves, were probably looking and waiting to see. Not too sure how this court case is going to go, and maybe
yeah,
stood back a little bit. And maybe Tottenham were the ones that put an arm around and said, "Look, we'll support you all the way. We understand the position that you're in." Or maybe it was a case. I don't know. I wouldn't be privy to how contracts work and all and stuff like that.
of course,
Maybe
yeah.
they were able to insert some sort of a clause or something there with Brighton in the contract to say, "Well, look, in the event that something like this happens, you know, there might be some sort of middle ground that they both meet on or something like that. So the exposure wouldn't have been as bad."
And
And I mean,
maybe that's why the fee was so low. You know what I mean?
yeah, like I mean, for him, like I mean, to me, he's a 50 million quid player, isn't he?
Yeah, every day, every
Yeah.
day. Yeah.
Right, that's enough of sort of general transfer stuff. Let's get into the meat and the gravy, as they say, of the Chelsea one at the moment. Let's start, I suppose, news last week. Let's bring up these two men here. News last week that your friend Thomas Tuchel, he's been put in charge of transfers. That man is being handed the war chest and he's been told, there you go off, get whatever you need. You're fully supported. We'll back you all the way with what you want, and then let's see how things go. That must have been great news for yourself and the fan base, wasn't it? That he is the man that's making the decisions.
Yeah, I think it's right, especially this season. I think I said it on a previous Chelsea Roar episode with yourself. It's absolutely essential that he has a say in who comes in this year, especially when he talks about the rebuild, because that's all we're hearing: rebuild, rebuild, rebuild. He needs to be given a chance to actually get the players that he wants. Um, it's contrary to popular belief, we don't need six, seven players. We need maybe possibly four key players to bring in,
Hmm.
and then he needs to see what way the returning loanees, can provide in preseason. But I think it's a huge statement from Todd Bowley. It's historic for Chelsea, only for the plastic fans, and I put that in inverted commas because a lot
Yeah.
of the plastic fans that I talk about on Twitter that are having meltdowns that we haven't signed anyone yet, haven't lived through the tough times in the 90s and the 80s and all that good stuff. You know what I mean? So it's it's the first time since Ken Bates was at the club, really, that we actually have someone saying, right, the manager now has a say in who comes into the club. So it's
Yeah.
yeah, it's phenomenal.
Yeah, it's the right model to be in place. And as you said, when we spoke on a number of episodes on your podcast about the Bowley era and stuff like that, the one thing you were talking about was that FSG model and stuff like that, where
Yeah.
Klopp has that say about players and stuff like that, and they've instilled that now there with Tuchel. So I think that's to me that's huge news and something that should be very encouraging for the Chelsea fan base. I'm going to bring up a
100%.
slide here. Let's get the toughest guy out of the way first. Um,
Oh God,
let
you
let's
know where
talk
you're
about
going.
let's talk about this guy. Where what happens apart from your feelings on this guy and everything that's gone on? And we did an episode on your podcast. I'd encourage everyone go over there, check it out. It was a real good episode that we did. How do you see this going? Is he going to end up going back there on loan? Are Milan going to have money by the sounds of things? They seem to have nearly every single player seems to be up for sale, regardless of whether they want to move or not. Um, how do you see this one panning out? Is he going to go somewhere? Could he potentially stay? Could you see him in a Chelsea jersey come August?
Well, no is the straight up answer to the last question. Um, but I think going on your previous questions there, if we look at if we look at Lukaku, we said we don't know the full story. Let's wait and see. That was our last conversation actually on the matter.
Yeah.
He's basically come out now, and his camp have come out and said that he wants to go and he wants to go back. Um, that to me shows it shows exactly what kind of human being he is. To be honest with you, he hasn't got the stones. We talked about traditional number nines. This lad has everything he needs to be all that and more, but yet just hasn't got the stones to do it. You know what I mean?
Mm.
Um, I think he's used the club as a vessel for his own self interests. Um, I think he's put Chelsea in a situation now where, like, don't give me this, oh, I need to feel loved and all this stuff. Like, if you need to feel loved, man, go on Tinder or something like that. Um, and, you don't need to tell anyone about it. It's for free.
Mm.
Um, I think when it comes to Lukaku, he needs to be out of the club yesterday, doesn't he? Like, but at the same time, the power's in Chelsea's hands, and I don't think we're just going to take a deal for the sake of a deal. And there needs to be something there. There needs to be either players in return. Apparently, Chelsea don't want to touch Lautaro Martinez now because he's not interested. And again, we go back to like that's how United should be viewing this. We don't want you if you don't want to be here, so fuck off.
Mm.
That's the same with us now. So we kind of, it might seem like Inter have Chelsea by the neck, but not really. Chelsea have Inter by the neck. You want the guy, give us what we want. And for him now, it's going to be a case of now we're in a position to sell you to another team if they can't afford you, you know? Um, yeah, just it could have been so different, but
Mm.
you just knew in your heart of hearts, didn't you?
It's such a weird one, isn't it? Because I had all the pieces for success, and 6 weeks into the season, it looked like you had hit the jackpot. I called it. I turned around and I said, "This is going to be fantastic." You guys, I tipped you guys to win the league when this guy
Yeah,
arrived, and I
yeah,
said
yeah.
this guy is going to score goals, and he took off like the road runner. And somewhere along the line, it just fell asunder, soured, got really, really dirty and dark and down on the interview and everything else, and then
Well, that's
you
where it
know,
started. Yeah, that's where it
and then
started. He
all and
wasn't.
then all the other hot water of everything that the club had to deal with between injuries and the Roman stuff and all that kind of stuff. It nearly that all nearly became a distraction to what had happened with this guy. It nearly had diluted down what had happened to him, and that's the only thing. The only thing I would say is I think it's gonna be tough enough to find a place to get him to agree to go to somewhere as well. You know what I mean? Because I'd see him. He's probably the kind of guy he'd sit on your bench with a puss on him taking that
Well,
money, like,
well, I don't want to mention a source, but there is backup here on this, and if he's a smart boy, which we're led to believe he's smart, but I mean he hasn't showed us any smart decisions so far. But we're led to believe because he speaks six languages
Yeah,
that he's a smart man. That's intelligence. That's not street smarts.
yeah,
Um, we're led to believe that Chelsea do have an option to take him to court and sue him for fucking everything he's worth, and because of breach of contract because of all this. So now he's actually put himself in a position where he's potentially this move needs to happen for him. You know
yeah,
what I mean? And it
mm,
needs to be something worthy of what Chelsea agree to. This
yeah,
isn't a case where we need to get rid of him. He needs to get out of there, you know?
yeah,
And if because Chelsea would have an absolute case to take him to court, if you think about it, and
mm,
potentially Inter Milan, because you know it looks like there's been a bit of play acting there.
mm,
Um, one scenario I just don't see, like we still owe 70 million on the deal. Inter Milan still owe Manchester United money on the deal as well.
yeah,
If I was Inter Milan, just say like, look, just forget about what you owe us, you know, and try and work have that as your peak and say, right,
which
well,
is
you're not getting your 70 million, and then go from there. Now I'm sure that's probably where it will go, but yeah, I'd be very worried for Lukaku if it goes down the legal route, to be honest with you, Noel. Um,
yeah,
these American owners don't fuck around, you know that.
yeah. But you come August, you don't expect him to be in a Chelsea jersey anyway. So
No,
that's the main
no,
thing.
definitely not. No, no, no.
Right.
And I don't want
Let's.
them near. I don't want them near the squad or the under 23s or the under 18s. The man is toxic. He's not a good person to be around. Not, certainly not in a sporting environment. Anyway, sure, he's
Yeah,
probably a lovely guy to his family and all that, but he's
yeah.
quite clearly a toxic human being in
There's
terms of
no
his attitude.
as I often say, there's no I in team.
No, no, and there's no I in Lukaku either. There's no fucking goal in Lukaku either most of the time.
Yeah.
So
Let's raise the mood now. We've got that out of the way. I wanted to get that out of the way first. Here's a man that me and you have conflicting opinions on. The
oh
use.
yeah,
Yeah. What you're thinking on this? Is this a deal you think you're going to get over the line?
yeah, I think this one seems to already be kind of be a formality ish, doesn't it? Enough there's been enough smoke and enough sources, you know, that have kind of clarified that he's happy to go there and we're happy to get him and Tuchel wants him. I think you're getting him on a free. Look, regardless of the kid's injuries, you know, the boy can play when he's on his day. And I mean, you look how he helped Barcelona towards the end of the season. I had to go and do a little bit of looking back on how he finished at the end of the season with Barca as well, and he was absolutely phenomenal. Hence why Javi wanted him to stay. Um, I think if they could get the injuries in place, you know, you're getting a very, very good player. But also, you're getting a player on a free, yeah, on high wages, but definitely at a good age where you get set on value. You know, I just think the deal makes sense. It is a position that we are in need of some major creativity, and the boy is a very, very creative player. I know he's a sick note. I know that's a thing.
Yeah.
But like I say, I just think we don't have a lot to lose in the deal by spending millions on it. You know what I mean? In transfer fees and agent fees and stuff like that. Agent
Yeah.
fees maybe, but
Yeah, I mean, there's no doubt there's going to be a reasonable signing on fee as well, but certainly it's not going to be anything like the 60, 70, 80, 90 million you would expect this guy in the market to be. There's no question about his quality or his talent. He's an absolutely fabulous footballer. The question is really, does Tuchel take the risk in terms of the injuries? And you've mentioned to me before that when he played for Tuchel, he was really, really good. That's basically what got him to move to Barca.
yeah.
Um, so I think this could be a really good match, and if you can figure out how to keep the boy injury free, he's going to be a heck of a talent for Chelsea.
Yeah,
Unbelievable.
it's one to watch, isn't it? It's one to watch. It's an
Yeah, yeah, absolutely.
interesting.
It'll be another one of those studies for sports science, won't it? That if you could keep this guy like healthy for even 30 plus games in a season. You know what I mean? Even if he had maybe a recurrence of a hamstring and missed maybe 10 games or something. But if you even got 30 games out of him, he'd have a massive impact on Chelsea.
Well, I mean,
Um,
he's an upgrade. He's a better player than Pulisic. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
That's a given. He's a better player than Hudson Odoi, who's another kind of a sick note at the moment as well. He's a
yeah,
better player end product wise than Timo Werner. He's a better player than Hakim Ziyech on his day. You know what I mean? So like, you want to be signing better players, right? I mean, none of those players. I'd happily have someone come on and debate me as to how any of those players that I've just mentioned are better than Usman Dembele. I really don't see it.
yeah.
Um, Havertz, it's a different conversation because he's kind of now your kind of number 9, number 10 shadow striker. You can play him on the wings, yeah, but it's a different. Ideally, you want Usman Dembele and Kai Havertz doing the business, right?
Yeah, absolutely. That'd be a heck of a combination. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Um, let's move on. Here's two others now that we spoke about during the week. Man City, Jesus and Raheem Sterling heavily linked with yourselves as well. I know it's been quiet in the last few days, but I think Chelsea are doing a lot of business in the background at the moment, and I think they've just dampened things down to make it a little bit quiet to get their business done. Because as soon as players have become available around the market, obviously there's always links with yourselves, there's links with ourselves. You'd automatically get linked with the top clubs and stuff like that. What you're feeling on these two boys? I mean, I know you spoke to me during the week about your fan base, and some of the fan base was saying, "Oh, it's City cast-offs." Me and you had a conversation, said these are two really good footballers, and they're available at the right price as well. And you're also talking about two boys who are also going into a World Cup year who want to really play really, really well and put themselves out there for that kind of thing. Well, what you thinking on these two boys now?
It's interesting, isn't it? Because I saw a lot of reactionary fans, with Raheem Sterling's performance on Saturday for England, and saying, "Ah, that's not the player we need" and stuff like that. But I don't think you don't be watching players on one game. Um,
Well,
I
I
mean,
wouldn't be taking anything out of the England games in the Nations League anyway because they've
no,
been deplorable.
yeah, 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 exactly. So and that's down to management too.
Yeah, but
So
these are just basically glossed up greedy friendlies, aren't they? Really, more than anything.
of
Let's
course, of
let's be
course.
honest here. There's nothing. There's the competitive nature in them is this size, really, when you think about it.
When you see 300 fans at Molineux, that tells you everything you need to know. You know what I mean? So,
Yeah.
yeah, I mean, look, Jesus, I think he makes a lot of sense for Chelsea. He is a good goal scorer. He is a great press. Um, looks like a player that could interchange with the kind of system that Tuchel employs. Um, but so does Raheem Sterling. You know, I mean, if you get rid of a Hakim Ziyech and a Timo Werner, say for example, you're going to need someone to replace them, and they can't be all. Unfortunately, they can't be all Cobham projects. You know what I mean? Not if you want to compete.
Yeah, you need a blend.
Um, you do need a blend, and I mean, you could, even if you bring Armando Broja back and you have Jesus in there and Havertz, and you know that most of them can interchange, bar say Broja, and then you're bringing Dembele in and getting rid of a couple. Yeah, I mean, good lord, I wouldn't say no to either of them or both of them. If I'm being
Yeah, from
honest.
from a tactical point of view as well, it gives Tuchel so many options. So many
Oh,
options. When you look at Sterling, Jesus, Havertz, Timo Werner, Usman Dembele, Raheem Sterling, when you look at all those guys, the amount of options that Tuchel has there in terms of deploying a formation or a tactical idea, it was for the money. It's so worth it, like so worth it. I
of
can't
course it is.
understand Chelsea fans either turning around and going, "Oh, it's City's cast-offs." Hey, listen, there's nothing wrong with taking players off a team that's been outstanding for the last 5 to 7 years. What's
But
so
also
bad about that?
look at the jams that both of these boys, mainly Jesus, have got City out of over the tail end of the season.
Yeah, he's been excellent. He's been excellent.
You
Yeah.
know?
I mean, you could make that argument about any player. Like Azuzman Dembele, Barcelona's cast-offs. You know,
Yeah.
would Jules Koundé be Sevilla's cast-offs? You know what I mean? Like you could make that argument about any player, but it's a false argument, really. Doesn't
Well, I
carry
think
any
I think
weight at
so.
all.
I think so, especially in this case where you're looking at two players that are entering into their final year of their contract. They both made it clear they don't want to stay. Pep didn't want Raheem last year, if we remember, after the Euros. It was the Euros year, wasn't it? That they were trying to basically pawn him off and get rid of him.
Yeah.
And so, like, these aren't cast offs. These are players that are entering in to their final year of the contract and aren't going to sign for City. And City, being smart business people, are saying, right, we can get something out of them. They've serviced their club well. You know, they've served our club very, very well. Let them go. You're getting Sterling at 27. You're getting Jesus at 24, 25.
I think you're talking about 70 mil for both, but I mean, even at 35 each, and that could be negotiable if you're doing a combined deal as well.
Listen,
But
we paid 100 million for that
for the
clown that we
category.
mentioned earlier.
Yeah, no, yeah, that's it. It just puts things in perspective, really, doesn't it? When you think about it, like when
You
you
know
think
what I
about
mean?
when you think about City, I know Haaland's wages is obviously huge. It's probably like a Brinks alloy truck pulls up to his gaff every week with his wages. But in terms of getting him in for 51.1 million, half the cost of Lukaku, it's staggering, like, isn't it? Really, when you think about it,
And in
it's just
fairness,
crazy.
Lukaku's on 375 grand a week as well. So let's not
Yeah.
forget that. So
So
I mean, the
yeah,
numbers,
so he's
they're not a
there or
million,
thereabouts on Haaland's wages. Yeah, absolutely.
not
Yeah.
a million, not a million miles off, and we don't know the agent fees and all. So yeah, no, I think these are two absolute shoe ins, to be honest with you, 100 million%. Look, if you told me next year that you're going to be starting with your, I'm not saying the first team, the first actual team sheet of the season, but if you told me that your squad is going to have Raheem Sterling, Gabriel Jesus, and Usman Dembele in your front three, and you've got rid of, you know, Pulisic, or I still think we'll keep Pulisic for another year. Being honest with you,
Mm.
I think we're both in agreement there. I think that will happen just to see if it ignites. But I'd say, even though the American owners are probably going, we need Captain America in there. I have a feeling Tuchel will go, well, look, your Captain America hasn't been doing much for us.
Mm.
Um, let's give him one more season. Otherwise, you're going to need to find another Captain America. To be fair, we look
Is
at the
is he
kid from
really the
fucking.
is he really the LeBron James of soccer?
You know what I mean? It'd be like, yeah, I think they might have to look at that that young kid from fucking from Valencia, that Arsenal let go. Mensa, is it? Mensa?
Yeah,
Yeah, he might be your Captain America, but this ain't the one.
yeah, absolutely. Um, let's switch things up. Let's go to the other end of the pitch now. And here's a guy. When I think of Chelsea, and I think of strong players and big players and guys that fit that Chelsea mold. Here's a guy who definitely excites me as well as you going into Chelsea. Koulibaly. This guy
Yeah,
is a monster.
yeah, 30 years of age. I know there's been lots of defenders. I think we've been linked with every defender bar Van Dijk. It's
Yeah,
like, you know what I mean? It's like, oh, could we go for a Matip? Like, I'm obviously messing here, but um, no, this one makes all kinds of sense. He's only turned 30, or I think, yeah, he's 30, isn't he? He's 30 at the moment.
think so. Yeah.
Um, I think he costs about 40 million euro, so equates to about, say, 30 million. Um, yeah, this one makes absolute sense in every sense of the word, because he plays on that side that Rudiger would play. Um, a leader, an absolute beast of a man. You obviously know him from watching the African Nations Cup as well with Senegal, when you're watching your boy Mane. Obviously knows Mendy as well, has a relationship with Mendy,
Mm.
our goalkeeper. So I mean, it's even your dog agrees. Look, for God's sakes,
There on the
it's
bed going mad he is, yeah.
yeah,
Um,
make it
I,
happen.
I,
You
ac-
say make it happen.
I actually watched him in the Aviva in a pre-season. So hang on one second, I'll let the old mascot out here. I watched him in a pre-season in the Aviva against Liverpool. And the way he controlled Salah in that game was unbelievable.
Yeah,
Unbelievable.
he's
He's a
fantastic.
serious baller. Like, and you hear people talking about age these days and stuff like that. But you look at Ronaldo, he's 37. You know, you look at Salah and the condition he's in, and he's you know 30 or whatever it is and stuff like that. You know what I mean? To me, 30 these days for these athletes, the way they're looked after and the sports science and the diet and the way they do things, 30 to me is the new 25, really. You know what I mean?
Well,
And a lot of these players, go ahead, yeah.
since as we're talking about a Chelsea transfer show, Thiago Silva signed on a free at 35.
Hmm.
Now becoming 37, and the lad hasn't lost a step.
That'd be a heck of a partnership with this guy, wouldn't it?
Oof.
And you know what excites me? What excites me as well is in the Premier League, I love when players come in like this, of this quality. So you're going to have Van Dijk in there. You're going to have Ruben Diaz in there. You have Thiago and Silva in there. You have this guy Koulibaly in there. There's so many big, strong, powerful defenders. And then is it any wonder these teams are going back to the traditional nine with a big ass striker? You know what I mean? Because of these
That's a
guys
fair
that are
point.
in there. You know
It's
what
a
I
fair
mean?
point.
So
Yeah, yeah.
it's an interesting one, but certainly he's one that you'd bring in a heartbeat, wouldn't you?
Million percent. Million
Yeah,
percent.
yeah.
This is one I think we need to get the. I know, I know you're probably going to mention Jules Koundé or whatnot, but like if he's going to go with the back three for the time being, at the moment, if you have a back three of, those three boys, Koulibaly, Thiago Silva, and Jules Koundé, like, that eases the blow. There you go.
You've led me into it nicely. I wanted to finish with this guy because I know this is a guy you've been working on for a long time. Should have been probably in last summer. Um,
Yeah.
but certainly he looks pretty good in that Chelsea jersey there, doesn't he? And again, he's another guy. This guy is a proper baller as well. Could you see a? I mean, this is a guy who definitely is going to come in, isn't he?
Oh yeah, 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 yeah. Even with the injury the other night, they talked about a hamstring injury. I know Deschamps said that he needed a bit of. He's going to need surgery, but as far as I know, it's minor surgery.
Yeah.
And he'll be good to go for preseason. So I don't think you're going to see any issues there.
Yeah. So that I mean that'd be I mean when you talk about I mean obviously Christensen went, I mean you know where his head and heart was towards the end most of the season anyway. But you look at Rudiger going, who's such a difficult player to replace, who's an absolutely fantastic player. So Chelsea fans wouldn't be too upset, would they, if they had Kunde, Thiago Silva and Koulibaly there in defence in the start of the season? That'd be pretty decent, wouldn't it?
Not a hope. Three absolute beasts. I mean, I know Kunde is the shortest of the lot, but Kunde has kind of got that Cannavaro ability. For anyone that hasn't watched him, check him out. His vertical leap is absolutely phenomenal. His pace is phenomenal. He's a proper ball playing centre back. You know what I mean? There's a reason that City wanted him before they went after Ruben Diaz. If anyone thinks I'm just saying that, go and do your own research and check it out. They did. I just think Sevilla weren't playing ball at that time. So this guy is definitely, yeah. I think if you brought in Koulibaly and Koundé, I think you'll find that most Chelsea fans would be over the moon, especially knowing that Ampadu was to come back, and Levi Colwill, and then you had the young kid, the boy Trevo Chalobah,
Yeah. What
who's had a
about
great season.
that kind of sorts out defense in terms of the links and stuff like that, and obviously players coming in potentially, and also the front line. Um, Give us a quick synopsis on the midfield. What do you see happening with the midfield? Or
I don't see Declan Rice coming in this year. I really don't. Um,
definitely not, definitely not.
I don't see how. I think West Ham have kind of they've they've worked themselves into a shoot. For any of our wrestling fans that are listening will know what I mean. So what I'll say is they've worked themselves into a scenario now where they've a player on their hands who they could get 75 million for this year, then, with 1 year left on his contract, but they're asking for 150, so they're pricing him out of a move. And in turn, they're making him very, very unhappy because he's quite clearly said he doesn't want to sign a new contract. Um, all the evidence shows that he wants to go back to Chelsea. That was his team. Blah blah blah. We know all this. Not here to give a history lesson, but you know what I mean. But
Yeah, yeah.
so, what does that mean then? Does that mean next year they have to sell him for what, 40 or 50, and then ask for that 75 that they could have got this year? Um, and
I'd, say- I,
potentially,
I'd say they're rolling the dice on potentially getting them re-signed up. I'd say that's what they're
which,
doing.
which ain't gonna happen. You know, which in fact the opposite will happen because you think about it. If he's made clear to his club he wants to sign for Chelsea, right? He's made clear that's the club he wants to go to, and then Chelsea go out and say sign a Sangari, who now you guys are interested in, or
Yeah,
which I think Sangari will end up at Liverpool. I think that's why Chelsea are probably holding off a little bit. I think we're in a position to help Declan Rice. Here's my real theory. I think we're in a position to help Declan Rice get his move next year for a better fee, purely because of the players that are coming back. I think they do have the option possibly of holding on to either one of Kante or Jorginho for a year longer,
yeah.
or both, and bringing Conor Gallagher into the mix. I don't think Conor Gallagher and Billy Gilmore will both stay because you've too many midfielders. Then you know what I mean. You're looking at Loftus Cheek. Then now Inter Milan are looking at him. That could be somehow worked into a deal with Lukaku. Who knows?
Mm.
Um, but
The talk was they were going to try and work it into a deal with your man Skriniar, wasn't it?
yeah,
Which
so
would be quite appealing as well. Yeah, absolutely.
which would be, yeah. So if we're getting some wages off the bill and possibly get your man Skriniar in as well. I mean, Jesus Christ, that's he's a good player, isn't he? He looks like
Absolutely.
he
Yeah.
likes to put himself about.
Yeah.
Um, so yeah, like there's a number of options there, but I don't see us going into a season with especially with him bringing Gallagher back and Gilmore back. I think it'll be one of the two. Ampadu, who can play both in defensive midfield and defense. I sound like an American football player, defense, but so
Yeah.
it'll be interesting there. I think with the midfield, because of the numbers there, I think that could possibly
Mm.
help Declan Rice get his move next season. I've said this to you a number of times,
Yeah,
because I think,
I think the focus will definitely be on sorting out your front line and your defence, and then your
yeah, yeah,
midfield might have to hold off for a year, or maybe even something in January. Who knows? But
yeah. Could, January could
I
be a
don't think he'll
possibility
solve
too.
all this in one or two windows. It'll take time.
No, exactly, and I think that's why I think Tuchel knows that. That's why he calls it the rebuild. So I think if you could get those one or two defenders in, well, two is a must. So if you get those two
Yeah,
defenders in, and you get one or two of the attackers, even if it was one of Sterling and Jesus, and then Dembele on a free,
yeah,
um, you know,
you're on the
it's
way. You're on the way.
well, you're definitely at least building something that is aimed towards closing the gap rather than closing the gap straight away. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
So yeah, I think that would be perfect. I know we've signed well, which I was very happy to hear. You probably heard about that goalkeeper, that Romano, which he got wrong again. Fabrizio doesn't usually get things wrong, does he? Not when he's getting them from good sources that
yeah,
people call shit. I'll leave that one out there for people to breathe in. You know what I'm talking about, though.
yeah,
Um, he
absolutely.
came out and said that your man Slanina, the young Chicago goalkeeper, was signing for Real Madrid. But now it turns out he's signing for Chelsea. You probably heard that, so that would probably be the first signing that you'll hear. But he'd be loaned back to Chicago for the year because I think he's only 19.
Yeah,
Um, but that'll be interesting. It's,
yeah.
it's always interesting when you hear them sign these lads you've never heard of from the United States or whatever, and you're going right because we have Miazga. If you've ever heard of him,
No, I hadn't. But it means, I suppose what it means is from Tuchel's point of view as well is that they're looking, you know, really forward. They're looking at a plan over the next 2 to 3 years, not necessarily just coming into the current season, which isn't always never a bad thing. It's always a good thing. So
but
yeah,
close
that's
the gap though. Do you know what I mean? Close the gap so that there's not that 15 points between you anymore, where it's at least closing down to 10 to fucking 6 points, and you're there or
yeah.
thereabouts.
Yeah,
I
you're
think
looking like
that
six. Try and 6 weeks out from the end of the season, be in some sort of a title race. I know you might
exactly
need a team here or there to maybe do you a favor, like we did, and it doesn't necessarily happen. But be there or thereabouts. That you know
100% be
you
in the
have a seat at the
conversation.
top table. You know what I mean? And
Yeah,
especially with the move Spurs are doing, because I think Spurs are. I think he's not finished doing business yet by a long stretch. And I think Spurs this season could be really, really good. I think the
no, he's
moves that
after
Conte is making there.
he's after Jonathan David now, isn't he? From fucking
Apparently so, yeah. Yeah,
Neil.
and
So yeah,
he's also been talking with Bastoni a lot apparently as well. But I don't know whether that boy had moved from Inter Milan, but who knows with the way things are going? Anything
you
can
never know.
happen, you know.
Mm.
Yeah, well, listen, it's been a pleasure having you on. As always, this has been your transfer show, especially Chelsea edition. Any Chelsea fans out there, as I said already, get over to the Chelsea Roar, light it up there with Ian. He loves conversation, debate, and opinion. As always, hit up Arwen as well, like, share, subscribe. This has been your transfer show, also available on Spotify, the audio shows, and Google Podcasts and Amazon Music. If you want to contact the show or leave your comments down below in the episode, let us know your thoughts on what Chelsea's needs are, who you'd like to see come in. Do you feel that the targets we've suggested in the episode are achievable? No doubt some of them are being worked on already, just ready to be announced, I would imagine. And it's been a pleasure. Till next time, my friend.
Thank you, sir.